Most people think they lack discipline, that they need more motivation, more willpower, more structure, but that's not actually the problem. The real problem is clarity, because it's almost impossible to stay consistent with something when you're not completely clear on what you're doing or why you're doing it. Think about it. When something is clear, simple, and meaningful, you don't need to force yourself to do it. You just do it. There's no constant debate in your head, no overthinking, no resistance every time you try to start. You don't sit there trying to convince yourself. You move. But when something feels vague, uncertain, or unclear, your brain reacts differently. It slows you down. It looks for distractions. It puts things off. Not because you're lazy, but because it doesn't fully understand the value of what you're about to do. And your brain is wired to avoid effort that doesn't feel necessary. That's why you can be extremely disciplined in one area of your life and completely inconsistent in another. You don't suddenly become a different person. The difference is clarity. Where you're clear, you act. Where you're unclear, you hesitate. And most people spend their time trying to fix the wrong problem. They try to force discipline instead of creating clarity. They push harder, set bigger goals, add more pressure, try to be more motivated. But pressure without clarity creates frustration, not progress. Because now you're trying to force action without fixing the confusion underneath. And that confusion builds over time until everything starts to feel heavy. You sit down to start something and you don't know where to begin. You think about everything at once, what you should do, what you could do, what might work, what might not. And instead of moving, you stall, you overthink, you delay, you tell yourself you'll start later. Not because you don't care, but because your brain doesn't have a clear path to follow. Clarity removes that friction. When you know exactly what to do, exactly where to start, and exactly why it matters, things begin to feel lighter. You stop wasting energy on decisions. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop needing motivation just to begin. And that's where consistency comes from. Not from forcing yourself every day, but from removing the resistance that stops you in the first place. That's why the most productive people don't rely on motivation. They rely on clarity. They simplify things. They break tasks down into smaller steps. They make the starting point obvious. Because the easier it is to start, the more likely you are to follow through. Every extra decision creates resistance. Every bit of uncertainty slows you down. And over time, that resistance builds into frustration. You feel stuck, like you should be doing more, but you can't seem to get going. So instead of asking yourself how to become more disciplined, ask a better question. What am I unclear about? Is it the goal? Is it the next step? Or is it the reason behind it? Because once those things become clear, everything changes. You stop overthinking, you stop hesitating, you stop waiting for the perfect moment, and you start moving, not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently. And that consistency is what actually creates progress over time. The tricky part about a lack of clarity is that it doesn't always feel obvious. It doesn't show up as something you can clearly identify. Instead, it shows up as hesitation, as overthinking, as starting something and then stopping halfway through. It shows up as constantly switching between tasks, never fully committing to one thing. And over time, that creates frustration because it feels like you're trying but not getting anywhere, like you're putting in effort but not seeing results. And that's where people start blaming themselves. They think they need more discipline, more structure, more pressure, but adding pressure to confusion doesn't create progress. It just makes everything feel heavier because then now you're forcing yourself to move without knowing if you're even moving in the right direction. And that uncertainty is exhausting. It drains your energy faster than the work itself because your brain is constantly trying to figure things out while also trying to take action. And doing both at the same time is what creates that feeling of being stuck. So if you've been feeling stuck lately, like you can't stay on track, like you keep starting and stopping, it might not be discipline that you're missing. It might just be clarity.